guys, it's Sebastian from AskSebby, and today we're going to talk about all the different versions of the American Express Platinum card. But first, if you are new here, we're all about how to maximize the value of your credit cards, so how to get the most cash back and also how to travel for free. If that sounds interesting, then subscribe to our channel, but let's get started. So there are quite a few versions, and a lot of people don't realize this, but again, you can really find the one that works for you, or again, if you realize that one really isn't a fit, you can apply for a second one, and they're actually considered separate products. There's 7 different versions or flavors of this card, and for the most part they're pretty similar with a few differences. 6 of the 7 cards look alike, and the main difference is that they might have a specific logo. So for the Mercedes-Benz one, there's going to be a Mercedes-Benz little wording around it, and the only one that's different is the Platinum Business card. All of these cards also get you into the Centurion Lounge for free, so if you are someone who is based out of one of these airports where there is one of these lounges, or you fly to one pretty frequently, then it might be a good idea to get it, especially if you are a frequent flyer. Since there is a lot of information here, we put all of this into a spreadsheet so you can easily compare it, and obviously we'll cover it, but if for whatever reason, if you do want to play with the spreadsheet, then there will be an access link in our blog post, and you can just click through, and again, if you want to download a copy or make a copy of it, you can do that as well. One of the things I really wanted to do was to cover the differences of these cards. For the most part, many of them are very similar. The one thing that makes them different is their superpower. Starting from the top, we're looking at the relationship requirements. So for the regular one, the business one, as well as the Mercedes-Benz one, there is no requirement. For the Ameriprise Financial one, technically there is one if you look through the terms, but it's not enforced. This means that even if you don't have a relationship with Ameriprise, you're going to be able to get the card. For Schwab, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs, there is a relationship requirement. You have to have a brokerage account. For Schwab, it's pretty straightforward because most people will be able to open up an account, but for Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, it's a lot harder unless you're a high net worth person, and even then, a lot of people I know who are very successful don't have accounts with them. Even though the information for these 2 versions is probably not going to be applicable for most people, and it's not really even applicable for me, I think it's just really good to understand it, and it's really good to be comprehensive with it, because if we're comparing all the different versions, we might as well be thorough. The next thing we're going to look at is the sign-up bonus. So again, these are the base ones, and they can change depending on whether you're targeted for a better offer or whether there's a promotion going on. Amex has a once-in-a-lifetime rule, which means that you can only get the sign-up offer for a specific card once in a lifetime. This means that you should really try to apply for the card when the offer is increased, that way you're getting the most value for the money you're spending. The really interesting thing here is that all of these different cards are technically considered different variations, so they're not considered the same products. A really good use case would be if you have the Platinum card right now, and again, maybe after a year, you realize that, hey, it's not worth it for me anymore, and maybe a year afterwards, maybe you want to have a Schwab account, and you want to kind of transfer some of your points out, you're going to be able to get the bonus for the Platinum one, which you already did, as well as the new Schwab one. If you apply for another Platinum card in the future, you will not get a sign-up offer just because you've already gotten the sign-up offer one time. So again, it's kind of confusing, so maybe I'm just going to refer to it as the vanilla one. As a side note, if you do want to apply for cards, please check our site first because we do have links. Just make sure that the offer on there is equal to the public offer, making sure that you're actually getting a good deal. Looking through this, it's pretty straightforward. The business card does have a higher minimum spend, just because, again, they're expecting you to use it for a business, which typically has more spend. The interesting one is that the Morgan Stanley card, as well as the Goldman Sachs card, don't really have any public information out. And again, I'm guessing the people who are actually clients will find out about it. You might have noticed that the Ameriprise card doesn't have a sign-up offer, and there's a reason why that we're going to explain in the next section. Moving on to the annual fees, all of them have a $550 annual fee, except for the business one and the Ameriprise one. The business one has a $450 annual fee, and again, that might change in the future depending on what happens, but the interesting one is the Ameriprise one, where there's a $0 annual fee in the first year. So even though you don't get a sign-up offer of the Ameriprise card, the really cool thing is that there's no annual fee in the first year, so it kind of works out in the same way. Assuming you can use all the perks, and you might want to change this for yourself depending on how you value things, the effective annual fee for all of them is positive, meaning that basically Amex is paying you except for the business one. For the business one, your effective annual fee in the first year is $50, and the main reason is because there is no Uber credit. For the other cards, assuming you can use all the perks, then Amex is basically paying you $50. For the Ameriprise one, they're basically paying you $600 because there is no annual fee. This is either good or bad, depending on how you value the sign-up offer. So again, for a lot of people, they don't want to pay $550 up front, but they don't really care about the points because they weren't really going to use them in a very good way anyways. They were going to cash it out. So this is a really good way to experience the Platinum card without the big annual fee. For the airline credit, it's actually really easy to use. So depending on which airline you select, there's a lot of ways to liquidate this. My recommendation would be to go check Flyer Talk, where there are specific forums for each of these specific programs you can select and to see what codes it's travel. For the Uber credit, if you don't really take Uber, it actually also works for Uber Eats, which is basically a takeout service. So if you order food once a month, then you're going to be able to use the whole credit. In year 2 and onwards, the effective annual fee is $150, and for the business one, it's $250. Authorized users is also pretty interesting. So for most of the cards, you can pay $175 to add up to 3 authorized users. So for example, if you have the vanilla one, even if you add 1, 2, or 3, you're still paying $175. So if you do have people you trust in your life, you might as well add 3 just because it gives them the perk to bring people into the lounge themselves. Each authorized user does not get their own incidental credit, and they also don't get their own Uber credit. You only really get the other perks of the Platinum card. I wouldn't recommend adding authorized users who you don't trust though, just because I think that's a dangerous decision. For the Ameriprise card, you can add authorized users in the first year for free. Reading through the terms, it doesn't seem like there's a specific limit, so for a lot of the other cards, they'll tell you if it's free for X amount of people. Here there is no limit, so I'm not sure what the high end of this is, but again, in year 2 and onwards, you do have to pay that annual fee for each authorized user, and it kind of scales upwards, so I don't think I would add too many people. For the Morgan Stanley one, the first authorized user is free, and then it's pretty much the same as the other ones. So the next 3 is $175, and each subsequent one is an additional $175. For the business one, it's $200 per authorized user. Now we're going to get into the more interesting stuff. So the first one is the spend multipliers, and then we're going to look at the superpowers. Again, there are other perks that you're going to get with all of these cards, and they're the same thing. So you get Priority Pass, you get the Centurion Lounge access, you get the SPG, Marriott, and Ritz status. For the spend multipliers, there's only really 2 interesting things. The first one is that the Mercedes-Benz card earns 5x MR points back whenever you buy a Mercedes-Benz. Again, Platinum cards technically have no limit, so they do have kind of an internal limit on the back end as kind of a risk management tool, but beyond that, there is no set limit. If you were looking to buy a Benz, and again, if you had the cash on hand, if you were going to pay off the card in full right afterwards, then I think this is a pretty good way to get a ton of points. For the business card, you get 1.5x back, so 0.5 more whenever you do a large purchase of $5,000 or more. Again, for most people here, that's probably not going to matter. This is for people who are buying large items or buying a ton of inventory for their business. The final thing we're going to look at is the superpowers, and these are really what makes the cards unique and different from each other. The vanilla card doesn't really have any superpowers, as you would expect, and the business one is really good if you fly a lot. For the business card, you get a 35% rebate whenever you book travel using your points on their website for your selected airline. This works for any fare class, so whether you're flying economy, business, or first class. For example, if you select American Airlines as your partner and you book a flight that costs $1,000, you would need to have $1,000 worth of points, so in this case it's 100,000 points, and once you book that trip, they're going to rebate you 35,000 points back, 35%. This means that your points are worth 1.5 cents per point, and again, if you got the card earlier this year, so before they made the change from 50%, you would actually get a 50% rebate, meaning that the 100,000 points you spent, you get 50,000 points back, which is even better, because you're really getting 2 cents per point there. Even at the 35% rebate, I think it's pretty solid, and it's in line with other competitors like the Chase Sapphire Reserve. You might be able to get a bit more value of transfer partners in specific circumstances, but this is pretty solid. You also get this perk for business class as well as first class if you ever do fly that, and we've covered that in the other video where we talked about how to fly Mint, JetBlue, using your points. One thing that kind of sucks though is that you need to have enough points to book the initial flight before they rebate you. So for example, if your flight is 1,000 points and you only have 80,000 points, you're not going to be able to book it. You have to be able to book the flight for them to rebate you. For the Ameriprise card, you get 5,000 points for every $20,000 in spend. So for me, I don't think that makes any sense to go after, just because it's not really that valuable. The real superpower of the Ameriprise card is that it has no annual fee in the first year, and you can add authorized users for free. For the Mercedes-Benz card, you get a $1,000 certificate that you can use towards a purchase or lease, after you spend $5,000 per year. On renewal of the card, you'll get a $100 certificate that you can use towards Mercedes-Benz accessories. Another interesting perk is that they're going to waive any excess miles that you have on your lease, up to 2,000 excess miles. And again, this happens at the end of your lease. For the Schwab card, the really great superpower is that you can transfer your points out to your Schwab account for 1.25 cents per point. So if you have 100,000 points, that's $1,250. If you're someone who has a ton of points, this is a really easy way to liquidate it towards cash and to really have something in your hands rather than some speculative travel. Yes, that 100,000 points may be worth $2,000 in travel, but again, $1,250 in cash isn't too bad at all. I think it really depends on your priorities, but I would be pretty tempted to cash out my points. With the Morgan Stanley card, again, you get the first authorized user for free. You can transfer your points out at a 1-to-1 rate, so the same idea as Schwab, but instead of it being 1 to 1.25, it's only 1 to 1, so 100,000 points is only $1,000. You also get a $500 credit if you spend more than $100,000 in a year. So again, for most people, this isn't going to apply. Another side perk too is that if you have more than $1 million in assets with Morgan Stanley, then they're going to waive the annual fee. So if you ever become super rich and you do want to have a platinum card but don't want to pay the annual fee, just move $1 million over to Morgan Stanley and you're going to be fine. For me personally, I think the business one, the regular one, as well as the Schwab one are really interesting just because, again, if you accumulate a bunch of points, you can cash them out for 1.25 cents per point. The Benz one doesn't really apply for me, but it might apply for you depending on your needs. If you want the platinum perks but don't really want to pay for it, then the Ameriprise one is a pretty good solution as well. So I hope that was helpful, and let me know if you guys have any questions. My question for you guys is, what are your thoughts on these different variations? Which one do you think is the best? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, it really helps us out. And if you know anyone else who'd benefit from what we just talked about, feel free to share this video with them because it's probably going to help them out. But otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.